not only do they not have books in the home, they're not speaking to their children. They're not speaking to their children when their children are still in their tummies, and they're not speaking to them when they're, through 18 months. And I was on the panel, another panel last night with a woman by the name of Carol Shattuck, and she is the president and CEO of Collaborative for Children, and they look at early childhood education and early childhood centers. And there's been studies that show that there are 3 different areas of development, and the first area and the most significant is language, and that 80% of your language is developed before you're 18 months old. The pathways and all the networks for language, and so that love for language, or that even the knowledge of words or access to words or hearing words at 18 months, and it starts at inception. And so mothers who are speaking to their children, music to their children, reading to their children, and have books in the home, those children are which is crazy. They're much more, I think they're 4 times more likely to be at grade level by 3rd grade. And 3rd grade reading level is the number 1 indicator of whether or not a child will graduate from high school or drop out of high school. And so, having books in the home for the kids to just look at and play is so much more important than we ever thought or knew that it was.
But of course, it's always a class
Yeah.
issue. I mean, when you talk about books in the home, I mean, let's be honest, books are $20, $35. A children's book is $10. Yeah, you can go try to find them. And so it's easy to say, you need 2 bookshelves, you need to fill them, but it's very much an impossibility. Just like when we talk about, to go back to the context of Brazil, when you talk about ebooks giving access to people, there's an implicit fact that an e-reader in Brazil costs, actually twice as much as it does here, and 98% of the population can't afford it. So again, yeah, it might be a solution if everybody could afford it. People talk about literacy, to use Nigeria as an example. People talk about a similar type of situation where you try to educate a very large country like Nigeria. People say, we'll use ebooks. And I say, then keep the electricity on first. Some really basic issues that always
realize
need to be addressed.
that.
Because that's exactly the kind of thing that you encounter when it's...
Absolutely not alarming.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, you have to address those basic social service issues. And, what I would say around technology, I mean, absolutely, when we think about, books in the home, we know, I shared a statistic earlier about underserved communities and low-income youth, and I mean, it's staggering when you hear the statistics of, children that come from middle-class homes. There's 13 books for every 1 child, but for a low-income child, 1 book for every 300, and so it's really staggering. And when you think about technology and the role of technology and having the access, you may see the phones, and that, as a matter of fact, the Pew Internet Study speaks to the fact that you will find that even among low-income families, but it's all about the value proposition. It's all about them understanding, why they need to go beyond the cell phones. What's the meaning and what's the value there? In many cases, we know that it's a income issue, it's an education issue, and then it's also just, again, understanding that value proposition. So for the Houston Public Library, in many neighborhoods, we serve as the only place where people can go and have free access to computers and the internet. And we really center it on trying to ensure that it's not just about the leisure. You have to have that. You get them in the door. I think about our after-school zones, where whatever it takes to get them through the door, there's gaming, it's all about the fun. But then once you're there and you have them there, you have that captive audience that you can then direct their learning and really, work to ensure that they're really getting the skills. Because in most cases, even though youth have this kind of innate ability or natural affinity towards technology, but if you slow them down, in most cases, they don't really understand how they get to the point that they've gotten to. So it's really important to make sure that they have that basic information. And so we really work very hard to be able to do that and ensure that we have, the type of programming in the classes that will help them to do that, not just for them, but also for, their parents as well.
You saw that, I mean, the Bibliotech project in San Antonio is very interesting, because that's if you're not familiar with it, it was a project that the essentially the mayor of Bear County. He's the they call him, I think, the governor or judge. But they created a purpose-built library that is all digital, and they loan e-readers, physical e-readers out to the community. And so there are about 3 area high schools that are using it as their high school library. And all it is you walk in, the whole library is no bigger than, from this wall to to the window. And there's 45 computers and a couple Xboxes and a couple conference rooms, and that's it. And that's an interesting experiment, and it does seem to be working. People do seem to not just go in and watch YouTube. Well, they limit them to 15 minutes on YouTube anyway. So yeah, you can come in and watch YouTube, but you have 15 minutes or an hour, I think, maximum with Facebook and social media. But then they want you to borrow an ebook, or want you to. I think you're almost required to. And it's an interesting experiment, but it does seem to be working. It's, the amount of money that was invested in it was about, I believe it was between $8 million for the first year and a total of $12 million. And just to compare, I won't use this library as an example, but they're building a new central library in Austin, and it's going to cost them $300 million. Right. And you're talking San Antonio is significantly larger than Austin in population, but it's Bear County, which is pretty interesting. These are experiments that really, who knows? We really don't know with digital learning tools how they work, how the people interact with them. So there's still a lot of experimentation going on too with that.
And it is, and I had the opportunity to go visit in person, and it's like, wow, but what I think resonated with me in terms of that library is understanding that it all has a role. It all has a role. The technology, the computers, traditional books, being able to touch and feel, it all has a role. And so we have to all be tolerant. We have to be...
The library will be closed in 30 minutes.
Take it. We're having a good time. But
First floor lobby, and the library will be closing in 30 minutes.
we'll be closing in 30 minutes. No, but it really is about ensuring that, as we move forward and as we really are in an environment where resources are becoming fewer and fewer, and there's greater opportunity to collaborate and leverage, we have to think about the way we do things and doing things differently. We've kind of got rid of that philosophy of doing differently with less. It's just just doing differently. How can we really capitalize on that, and how can we really grow? And it's amazing what you find out about yourselves and what you're capable of and what can be accomplished, when you're forced to think differently. And so I think one thing the Houston Public Library really pride ourselves is on being innovative and working to think outside the box and offering those kinds of opportunities. And so the Bibliotech Library was just, really an example of what can be done when community comes together and, thinks about what can be done, not what can't be done.